Greetings once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 3 of Link's Awakening DX. We just cleared through level 3 and now we'll be continuing on to level 4, which as it turns out is this game's water dungeon. Luckily this is an Ocarina of Time, so the idea of the water temple being the worst dungeon in the game hadn't quite been invented yet. I don't really think level 4 is a bad dungeon per se, but there is kind of a problem with the original version of the dungeon, but I will go into that much later. For now though, let me just point out, this enemy is completely unique. It only appears on this screen. It's a monkey that throws coconuts at you. I have no idea if there's a way to defeat it, but it only shows up on that one screen, so I have no idea why they programmed an entire enemy just to use it one time, but there it is. So after lifting up those rocks on the beach, you can advance into an entire new section of the map, after jumping over this hole with the Pegasus boots, of course. Now, in anticipation of the upcoming areas, I feel I should say in advance that I know I already said that this game started off as a port of A Link to the Past, but considering some of the enemies and graphics that we're soon going to see, this idea will be very much reinforced by the game itself, so look forward to that. I mean, you can probably already tell that there is a flying enemy dropping bombs that's lifted straight from A Link to the Past. No idea how to actually kill them, by the way. Here's another one of those secret seashells, and now that I think about it, I have no actual idea what these enemies are called. They're not Stalfos, they're not Moblins. Maybe they're supposed to be that enemy from the Dark World of A Link to the Past, but this isn't the Dark World, so I have no idea what they're doing here. Anyway, the way forward is blocked by a river, so we'll have to go through this underpass to get to the next area. Seems like we should be getting something to deal with the water very soon. Apparently, Link cannot swim initially in this game, despite the fact that he was sailing on a ship when he crashed into the island. And those of you who have played this game before might be wondering why I'm even going in this direction. I actually accidentally went this way in the initial recording of this part of the game, so I decided to just go with it and see if I could actually complete this part of the game sooner than the developers intended, and it turns out you can. So this area introduces Armos statues. These are a classic Zelda enemy that comes to life and attacks as soon as you touch them, and in Game Boy Zelda for some reason you can only destroy them completely with a bomb. I don't feel like wasting bombs on them, so I'm just gonna try and get around them as much as I can. You can still swat them away with your sword. Now, Armos statues in a very palace-like setting. Does this remind you of any location from A Link to the Past, maybe? Well, if you don't realize it yet, maybe look at the area surrounding the entrance to the shrine, which we are coming up on in just a couple of seconds. So, in case you didn't notice, this entire area is basically an homage to the Eastern Palace from A Link to the Past. I mean, look at the graphics on the doorway here. That's a complete copy and paste. Seriously. I have no idea what they were going for. Maybe it was to clue the player into the fact that they should probably have the bow and arrow for this area, because the enemy inside the shrine is basically the boss from the Eastern Palace in A Link to the Past, a giant Armos statue that tries to jump and slam into you, and you can defeat him only with arrows or apparently a spin attack. Yeah, I guess they decided that there should be some way to defeat this guy if you run out of arrows, but by making him vulnerable to the spin attack, it makes it possible to complete this part of the game way before having the bow and arrow, which I do not at this point. The bow and arrow is actually bought from the shop at a ridiculously high price, so I'm going to have to collect a lot of rupees in order to be able to buy it. The prize you get for beating this guy is actually the key to unlock level 6, but we're doing level 4 in this video, so this was kind of a spur-of-the-moment idea to get the key to level 6 way before getting the key to level 4. I just decided to do this because it was possible, and it's unfortunate that you're actually able to do this because it kind of messes with the narrative they were going for. You were not supposed to find this mural until way later in the game, because this is supposed to be a critical moment in the game's story, because it's here that we find out that the entire island is basically a dream of the Windfish. So if we wake up the Windfish, doesn't that mean the entire island will go away? Because if it's a dream, we know what happens to dreams when the dreamer wakes up. However, there's no way to leave the island without waking up the Windfish, and we kind of need to do that because what is Hyrule going to do without Link? They're completely helpless without him to save them over and over. And it makes the whole quest tragic, because if we wake up the Windfish and all of the people on the island disappear, then all those people that the player might have started to take a liking to are just going to go away forever, and they haven't made any canonical appearances in any other Zelda game. As I mentioned, Marin appears in Hyrule Warriors, which is pretty heartwarming in hindsight. Oh, and because this is a dream world, that actually explains all of the Mario cameos rather well. It's just a dream. These enemies aren't actually appearing in the world. Something like that anyways. Anyways, I suppose finding that place and actually doing this part of the game doesn't hurt the narrative too much. In fact, it may actually change a particular scene's context, but we'll get to that later. Getting back on track, oh, and I should mention that that area is actually rather dangerous. The enemies do a lot of damage, and going there with so little hearts was actually a bit of a risk. Although I do have life medicine, so that's probably not an issue. Anyways, the next part of the game is a village populated by animal people. I approve. There's really only one NPC we need to interact with at the moment, and that's a bear who is dressed like a chef. I also approve. And in one of the houses you can find, I am not kidding, a naked hippo. I also approve. I'm not kidding about the naked hippo. She's even got boobs in the Japanese version. So if this is the windfish's dream, what exactly does that say about the guy? Well, we haven't met him yet, but we can trade the honeycomb to this bear in exchange for a pineapple. That's probably the most sensible trade we've done throughout this entire journey, and it even sets a quest flag for us, as the bear tells us that a walrus is blocking the way into the desert, which is where we need to go next. Luckily, there is a warp hole just outside the village, and if you have the other warp hole active, it will take you straight back to it. So that's a quick way to get back into the village, which is good because I need to recover my hearts, like, really quickly. I don't want to waste that life medicine on just nothing. So we can also see that Marin is not present in front of the weather vane like she normally is. She's actually headed all the way down to the beach, which seems like it should be dangerous because all of those monsters and other enemies are down there, and she apparently manages to get past all of them onto the shore. I have no idea how she managed that. She did it at the start of the game in order to find Link, though, so I guess it's not too much of a stretch. But the monsters were only really active after Link had washed ashore, so I guess she wouldn't have run into anything. And I have no idea why I'm talking about all of this. I guess I'm just trying to fill some time while I actually get to where Marin is. And we haven't exactly seen these screens. There's a whole beach full of things, and I do see that there's a bombable wall there, but there is nothing in there for us at the moment. I know what's in there, but we can't do that part of the game quite yet. So here she is, and we can talk to her and stay with her for a little while. Which seems like a bad idea because Link should probably not be getting too attached to this world. He already knows it's a dream world. Anyways, Link is completely silent throughout this entire cutscene, which Marin kind of makes reference to. You know, they're very insistent on not having Link say anything in any of the Zelda games, which I think works to the game's detriment. I know Link is supposed to be the player's self-insert, kinda, but he has so much personality in certain games that I think it kinda takes away from that idea. Link is the most expressive in Wind Waker, for example, so you're trying to have Link be a blank slate so the player can insert themselves into the story, and yet they also have games where they give Link an actual personality and character, so I don't really know what they're trying to go for these days anymore. Anyways, I'm just rambling. At the end of the day, I really just think refusing to characterize Link at all works to the detriment of the character and the series. Anyways, after talking to Marin, she will follow us around for a little while as we take her to the walrus. And Link holds her over his head like she's becoming an item. Ah, an item? Like a couple? You see where they're going here? Anyways, there are a couple of photos that you can only get while Marin is following you around, so I'm actually going to get around to those, and there are quite a number of Easter eggs associated with Marin, even in the non-deluxe version. One of the Easter eggs that is only in the deluxe version, however, occurs when you stand on this particular cliff. We get this nice looking scene. This pixel art is really strange, though. Look at Link's face. It's really weird. And who's even talking in this scene? Is Marin talking? Probably just now, but then suddenly the photographer is here apparently, and he's going to take a picture of this wonderful scene. While we're not looking, I guess. Well, okay, we can take a look at it later. And that's not the only photo either. There's actually 3 of them, and oh my goodness, a guardian acorn right as I was about to exit the area. Weird that an enemy respawns right behind you as you finish up with that scene. There's another photo you can get by dropping into the well where we found the first heart piece. Suddenly, the photographer is here too. He's turning into that photographer from Earthbound who just shows up wherever there happens to be an opportunity for a photo. That probably looked hilarious. Marin just landed right on top of Link. And there is a third photo you can find by simply going to the weather vane. Speaking of the weather vane, there was a weather vane in A Link to the Past as well. This weather vane is probably going to be important. Anyways, this is the last photo that you can get only while Marin is here, so if you complete the next part of the main quest, then you've missed out on these photo opportunities for good. I mean, again, there's no bonus for getting all of the photos, but I might as well. Show off as much of the game as possible and all that. This photo's a little funny because Terran just shows up randomly and gets into the photo as well. There are other places we can take Marin that don't involve photographs, and these are all possible to find in the original version of the game, as well as the DX version. So, first up we have the Crane game, and this has got to be the funniest Easter egg in all of Zelda history. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating that, but this is still really funny. Marin decides she wants to take a crack at the Crane game. So let's watch as she starts moving the crane all the way to the right. Keep going. You're kind of overshooting all of the items there, Marin. Well, we're not going to get any prizes, it seems. Marin, what are you trying to pick up? I would walk away from that if I were you. This is so hilarious. Every time I watch it, I giggle. She actually lifts the guy running the crane game and just drops him onto the conveyor belt like it's nothing. Ah, Marin, I love you so much. Yeah, pros aren't exactly allowed at crane game places. Well, that's enough of that. There are a couple of other things you can do while you are here in the village with Marin. So, this one I didn't remember until I was just about to leave the village, but you may have noticed that there are cuckoos running around the village. Cuckoos, cuckoos, whatever you call the chickens that appear in the Zelda series. They can, of course, be attacked, and Marin doesn't exactly like it, or does she? That message has a very rare chance of appearing whenever you attack a cuckoo with Marin present, and I got it on the second try, so lucky me. I think Marin being there actually stops the cuckoos from attacking you if you abuse them for long enough, like they do in just about every other Zelda game. But they still do that if you attack them for long enough. You can also go into Marin's house and find Terran sleeping after being attacked by those bees earlier, and if you break the pots, Marin gets mad. Come on, Marin, they respawn after I leave the house, it's no big deal. There's probably a couple of other things Marin reacts to, but I don't know all of them. Let's see how she reacts to the warp hole, because that's the quickest way back to the animal village. So we just have to head on over here and jump straight into the hole. She does not follow, but appears right behind us. Oh no, she actually goes flying into the sky, but she didn't jump into the hole, so that's really weird. Is she just magnetically attracted to Link? Well, the walrus is just around this corner, so we just need to take Marin over there and start singing. And in this area, I thought maybe there was something buried in that weird-looking flower tile, but there isn't, but it is still good to take out the shovel and try it in Marin's presence. She is very enthusiastic about digging, it seems. Let's hope she's not a gold digger. That would be really awful. So here's the walrus. He's sleeping, just like Snorlax in Pokemon. And we wake him up with some music, just like with Snorlax in Pokemon. And he gets so excited that he, jumps for a little bit and promptly... Wow, she sings for a long time. And he falls into the water. Well, that sure got him out of the way, and now the animals want Marin to sing for them. Apparently, she journeys to the village every so often to sing for them, but how do you get past all of the monsters and obstacles and stuff? Oh, right, she just uses the warp hole. I guess it makes sense if you imagine that she actually knows how the warp hole works, but she would have had to make the journey here at least one time. You know what, never mind. There's a bombable wall in the village. Let's go ahead and see what's inside. Now, unfortunately, I actually jumped the gun a little bit. I forgot that you need another item in order to get the heart piece from this cave. There is a heart piece there, isn't there? Yes, there is. And we do not have the tools to get across that gap for the time being. Like, maybe you can make some kind of weird Pegasus boot jump if you timed it exactly right, but I did not know if there was any method to doing that. So let's go ahead and head into the desert, which is where we will find the key to level 4. The desert is full of weird-looking enemies and a bunch of bones, and on this screen, well, not on this screen, but the next one, there's levers. That's a classic enemy you can find in beaches and deserts in Zelda, and a mini-boss, as a matter of fact, a mini-boss on the overworld. It's the Landmola from A Link to the Past. Yes, that enemy that you fought 3 of in the middle of a sand pit, although the Link's Awakening version adds quicksand and a hole in the center. If you fall through that hole, you will drop into a cave and have to do this boss battle all over again. Of course, a couple of spin attacks and he's dealt with very quickly. No need for an ice rod this time, although when you pick up the key, the quicksand still pulls you in as you're holding it over your head. Maybe Link should have thought about maybe not holding items over his head whenever he gets them, but we've got the Angler Key. That grants us access to level 4, and there's one of these weird owl statues as well. You don't need to attach a stone beak to this one in order to get it to talk. Don't you just love that it's hinting at something that we already know about because we did the Southern Face Shrine already to get the face key? And those are in fact Pokies from the Mario series. Wish they would move faster. And here on the shoreline, you can find yet another secret seashell, and it's at this moment that I remember that the cave where you get the Angler Key, first of all, if the key falls into the hole in the center of the quicksand, it actually drops into the cave below, so no harm, no foul, you can pick it up right then. But in that cave, there is also a hidden bombable wall. Let me just say that Link's Awakening has a bizarre fixation on unmarked bombable walls. I have no idea how anyone would think to tap their sword along the wall. If this was a dungeon, then maybe the map would show that there's another room here. But yeah, I had to look up a guide in order to find this one. There's another heart piece. I mean, it's not too big a deal to not get all of the heart pieces because there's actually only 12 of them, with 8 dungeons and 8 heart containers found from the bosses, and 12 heart containers that, well, 12 heart pieces, excuse me, that give you 3 additional heart containers. That will give you 14 hearts total, which is all the display at the bottom of the screen can display at once. So that was probably their logic for only using 12 heart pieces. And there are actually way more heart pieces in the Switch remake of this game, so I guess that gives you a little bit more of things to find. Anyways, we need to head into the mountains next. So just to the right of the entrance to level 2, you will find this mountaintop, and we can enter this cave to start exploring a cave system that is only slightly less confusing to navigate than Death Mountain from A Link to the Past. There's not a lot going on in these cave areas. They're probably a little bit longer than they need to be, but no matter. The more enemies there are, the more chances we have to collect some rupees, so we can afford all that stuff at the shop. And there's a heart piece that we're not going to get for quite a while, and here we have the obstacle that you need the Pegasus boots to get past. I very quickly cleared past the obstacle, but then realized that there was a treasure chest that I had missed. So let's go back and get it. It's probably just more rupees, but again, you're going to want to find as many of those as possible if you plan on actually paying for the stuff at the shop. Hint, hint, hint. So yes, if you touch that obstacle, it will put out that annoying text box, so let's move on. This area is full of water, so if you want to get through it a little quicker, equip your Roc's Feather and jump across the water tiles rather than dash through them, although dashing probably gets you through them at a decent speed as well. And in this area, you can find another part of the trade quest. There is a guy sitting on the mountaintop, and if you find him earlier in the game, he says he's going to get lost in the mountains, and it seems he was right. But it seems all that climbing has left him more than a little bit famished, so I say we feed him something spicy. It's a pineapple. We're feeding him the pineapple. You thought I was going to feed him something else? Come on. In exchange for the pineapple, he gives us a mountain flower, a hibiscus. Wonder what we're going to do with that. Well, that's all we can do with the area for now. Now it's time to head to the entrance to level 4. Now, unfortunately, it was at this point that I realized that I forgot something kind of important and had to do a bit of backtracking. You see, in order to enter level 4, you first have to put the key into the keyhole. That's kind of what keys do. They open dungeons. So I found myself at a roadblock and had to backtrack to where the keyhole was. Luckily, I remembered where it was. You just have to go further to the right of the cave that we started off in. So this is one of those dungeons that puts the keyhole very, very far away from where the actual dungeon entrance is. I mean, it doesn't look like it's very far away, as you'll see, but you do have to go through a bit of a trek in order to get here. So here's the keyhole, you put it in, and of course the cave is behind the waterfall, as they often tend to be. So yeah, you were supposed to hop down from that cliff in order to gain entrance to level 4. Also note, just to the right of the entrance to level 4 is another warp hole, so be sure to get that before you move on. It'll be nice to have a quick way back here. Okay, now it's time for level 4, the Angler's Tunnel. Well, right off the bat, I can already tell you something that annoys me about this dungeon. The music is literally just a remix of the cave theme. You'd think they would give it some kind of unique song. And I was hoping that they would give it a unique song in the Switch remake. They did not, which is one of the many reasons I was disinterested in the Switch version of this game. And I still am. Alright, so make note of that bomb refill. It's going to be important to have a quick way to restock on bombs. In these first couple of rooms, there are enemies that you have to use the shield to defeat. From this dungeon onwards, though, the shield becomes less and less relevant as the game goes on, even though there is a shield upgrade in one of the later dungeons. And oh goodness, do not pick up that chest, otherwise you will have to spend several seconds reading the compass text yet again. Alright, so we have a locked door to the right, and in this room there's going to be a key in that chest, so very easy to pick it up. And the darker colored water is deep water, which you cannot swim in at the moment. You need the item from this dungeon in order to be able to swim, and you need to kill all the enemies to leave this room. Interesting thing to note is that going into deep water before you're able to doesn't cause you to lose any hearts. You just get sent back to wherever you entered the room from. In the Oracle games, you do lose hearts for going in deep water, so keep that in mind if you play those games. It can be convenient to just go into the deep water and get sent back to the beginning of the room if you need a quick way back, or you accidentally jump through something you weren't supposed to. Anyways, there's another locked door behind the first one, which means I have to go back and find another key, which is kind of annoying. But in this room, you can find the stone beak, in case you need a hint as to how to complete the level. And moving forward, there is probably going to be a map very close by. There it is, as a matter of fact. It always says, "At last you got the map." But I found the map very early on in the dungeon, so it's not like I'm just now getting it or something. Anyways, you need to use the Pegasus Boots and Rock's Feather to get across this gap, and I'm actually having trouble with the timing. I very often undershoot my jump or overshoot it trying not to. And in this room, there is another key. You need to bomb this block and then push the next block into the water to get it. And did I actually pick up the piece of power? I might as well. This room actually has a P-hat in it, which is a very annoying enemy from Zelda 1, and I decided to get a little bit of revenge on these guys for being so annoying to kill. Pow! That feels so good to do. The piece of power, if nothing else, is very satisfying to fight enemies with. Even if it does make you just a little bit too powerful, in my opinion. So in this next room, we have another room with a bombable block, and that tone means there's a key in here. So yes, the bombable blocks also give you an annoying message if you touch them, even if you have bombs equipped and probably already know what you're doing. Also, you should probably grab that flying heart. Like, you should probably grab them whenever they show up, because they're very convenient. There were 3 full recovery hearts. I still don't have a lot of heart containers, so I felt it prudent to be as cautious as possible. Now we can move on with the dungeon. I've got 2 keys, and I know there is a locked door and a key block that I need to unlock in order to get through to the rest of the dungeon, so let's start heading back to where the locked door was. We can finally start exploring the rest of the area. Let's see what's over here first, though. Nothing of interest quite yet, so we'll just have to kill these enemies again. Evidently, they respawned. And again, I've taken too many hits apparently and lost the piece of power, but that's okay. I don't really need it in this part of the game. The enemies don't honestly pose much of a threat unless you, like, go to late game areas when you still have so few heart containers. Anyways, hop across these pools of water and unlock that door. And now we can unlock this next door. I can't get that chest at the moment. The gap is way too big. Maybe you can clear 4 blocks with a Pegasus Boots Rock's Feather jump? I don't really know. You can barely clear 3 blocks as it is, so probably not. Unlock that and push the block, and we can move on to the next area of the dungeon. Now, I mentioned that this dungeon had a very serious flaw in its original incarnation in the non-DX version of the game. We're approaching the area of the dungeon where that becomes relevant. There's no problem in the DX version, so that's fine. When you kill all the enemies in that room, a key drops into a pool of water in the area down below, so we can't get to it. We cannot swim yet. And that's important, because there is a gap in one of these upcoming rooms. I will point it out when I see it. Right there, it's that gap leading to that button on the far side of that room I was just in. In the original version of the game, you could make a diagonal jump with a Roc's Feather in order to clear that gap and get to that switch before you were supposed to. And that's important because that made it possible to use up all the keys without getting the dungeon item, which is necessary to get that key that just fell into the pool of water. So you could end up with a situation where you don't have any keys, you need a key to get the dungeon item, but you don't have the dungeon item, and so you cannot get the last key. And that would have caused the dungeon to become unwinnable. But it was the original version of the game, so I'm sure that there was a glitch or something that you could have used in order to fix it. But they very wisely decided to fix that problem with the dungeon for this version of the game, so there's no need to worry about it anymore. And they fixed that glitch that I'm talking about anyways. So it's good that they fixed the dungeon as well. They fixed it by extending the width of the gap, so there's no possible way you could make that jump, even if you used a diagonal jump. You can clear this gap with a diagonal jump, though, which is a bit of a shortcut on your way to the boss. But I don't have the boss key. And you know, I'm getting just a teensy bit annoyed at having to turn back because I don't have the correct key for a door or something, but it's no big deal. And here we have another mini-boss. It seems to be a giant Octorok that circles around the room. Where have I seen that before? Oh, yeah, they completely remade this boss for the mini-boss of the first water dungeon in Ocarina of Time. Well, it's a good thing you can't jump over him in that version of the game, otherwise he would have been really easy. For this guy, you just have to jump over him and then slash him from behind. Very easy to deal with him. He doesn't even take that many hits, and if you're really advanced, you can charge up a charged spin attack and slash him with it from behind. That will look very awesome if you manage to pull it off. This room is a bit annoying. You have to pull this all the way back so that the blocks are far away from the door, that you can eventually just run past them and get into the next room, but there's an enemy in the way, so this is a little bit annoying. I'll get it on the second try, though. Ah yes, and earlier you saw me pick up a piece of power followed by a Guardian Acorn. I was interested if you could have both items on at the same time. You cannot, and picking up the Guardian Acorn will override your piece of power, which is unfortunate. Would have been nice to have that for the boss. So now we have these Zora Flippers. Thankfully, I do not need to pay 500 rupees for this, like I needed to in Link to the Past. And in this room, we have a shining tile on the ground. When you touch it, another tile lights up. And if you light them all up by touching the shining tile, the door opens, which is not really useful. We just came in from there. But it's important to memorize the combination of buttons you needed to push, because there is a similar set of buttons in this room, and these do not light up, so you have to remember the order you press them in the previous room. And I believe there's an owl statue hinting at this. For some reason, though, when I was putting in the combination, I apparently messed something up and stepped on them in the wrong order, so I had to do it again. I didn't see the button that I pushed incorrectly. Maybe I accidentally touched two at the same time? I don't know. But eventually, I figured out that I just needed to re-input the combination one more time. I don't know if this is... No, this couldn't be randomized, so it's possible that you could input all of these, like, without having to go to the room where the buttons light up. And you saw that Link can now swim now that he has flippers. I don't know what difference having flippers makes. And you have an interesting puzzle in this room. Stand on top of the thwomp in order to let him carry you to the top of the room. Now, we just need to find the boss key and use it to unlock the door and fight the boss. Oh, hey, here's the boss key. Now we can just return to the boss room. Also, all of the bosses are called nightmares because this is a dream world, so nightmare enemies. Makes sense. Although I keep thinking that Nightmare from Soul Calibur should show up. Odds are Link has fought that guy at least once. Did you know that in Japan, Nightmare and Link share a voice actor? Anyways, let's move on to the actual nightmare of this dungeon. You actually fight this guy underwater, which is appropriate because we just got the flippers. It is a giant anglerfish, and unfortunately he's not that interesting because you're right next to his weak point when you enter the boss room. It's that shining thing on his head. It's light, or whatever it's supposed to be. Very easy to just slash it a bunch. All this guy does for attacks is he sends out a bunch of smaller anglerfish at you, and he also charges at you, but he will, more often than not, charge right into his sword. Bosses in Link's Awakening are just not that interesting, mostly because they have painfully low amounts of health, but also because they're not really that threatening. This game is portable, and they tend to make portable games easier than console games, so that might explain why the boss difficulty is so low, but I'm kind of looking forward to epic boss battles and not really getting any of them. Anyways, that's not a huge issue. I'm still enjoying the game. We're halfway through collecting all of the instruments, however. Next time, we head into level 5. We're going straight into the fish's mouth. Pun intended.